Tell her that I'm sorry." The words came out uneven, pulled from a chest that no longer obeyed the heart inside it. Annie stopped where she stood. She was 6, small. Her knees scraped from 100 falls she never talked about. Her breath fluttered in and out too fast, her chest rising like she had been running even though she hadn't. On the ground in front of her, a man lay sprawled on his side, one arm bent beneath him, the other reaching weakly into empty air. His face was pale, damp with sweat, his mouth trembling as he fought for breath. Annie had never seen an adult look like this, like something fragile that might break if you touched it wrong. Behind her, her brother made a thin, frightened sound. He was only 5, younger than Annie, and fear wrapped around him easily. He pressed his face into her back and grabbed her dress with both hands, clinging as if she were the only solid thing left in the world. "Annie," he whispered. She reached back and covered his hands with hers. They were shaking, so were hers, but she didn't let go. The man's eyes lifted and found her. They were glassy, wide, filled with something heavy and sharp that made Annie's stomach hurt just to look at. "Please," he breathed. Tell her I'm sorry." Annie swallowed. Her throat felt tight. "Mister?" she said softly. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, like it belonged to someone else. She took a careful step closer. Her brother tightened his grip. "Don't," he whispered. "I don't like him." The man noticed the boy then. His gaze shifted past Annie, settling on the small body pressed against her back. For a moment, something flickered across his face, recognition, maybe, or pain. He tried to lift his head, but his body refused him. The boy shook his head violently, eyes wide. "No," he said, his voice breaking. He buried his face deeper into Annie's dress. Annie felt his fear like it was her own. "It's okay," she told him, even though her heart was pounding hard enough to hurt. "I'm here." The man exhaled a shaky breath. "I didn't mean to scare him," he said, each word costing him effort. He looked back at Annie, his eyes softening. I can't ask him." Annie frowned, confusion pushing through her fear. "Why?" she asked. "He's right here." The man closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering what little strength he had left. When he opened them again, they were fixed on Annie alone. "He won't listen to me," he said quietly. "And I don't blame him." Annie didn't understand that either. "You can tell him," she said. "He's my brother. He listens to me." The man's lips trembled, almost forming a smile, but it didn't quite happen. "No," he whispered. "Not him. Not like this." He coughed, his body shuddering. Annie took another step closer without thinking, her brother protesting softly but staying with her. "Who do you want me to tell?" Annie asked. "You keep saying her." The man's eyes filled. He turned his head slightly, as if looking at something far away, something only he could see. "Your aunt," he said. "The woman who raised you. The one who's been carrying my mistake all these years." Annie's heart skipped. "My aunt?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "The one who couldn't walk away when I did." Annie's grip tightened around her brother's hands. She thought of her aunt lying on the couch at home, thin and tired, her eyes sometimes clear and sometimes lost. She thought of the photograph, the one her mother kept hidden, the one her aunt had pressed into her mother's hands long ago. "Why don't you tell her yourself?" Annie asked. The question came out before she could stop it. "If you're sorry, why didn't you say it before?" The man let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. "Because I was a coward," he said. "Because I chose silence when I should have chosen responsibility." His breath hitched. "Because every year that passed made it harder to admit what I'd done." Annie looked at him, trying to understand how someone so big could be so broken. "And my brother?" she asked quietly. "Why won't you tell him?" The man's gaze flicked back to the boy. He raised his hand slightly, palm open, not touching. "Just there." "I don't have the right," he said. "Not yet. Not like this. He's scared. He doesn't know me." His voice cracked. "I don't want his last memory of me to be this." The boy shook his head again, tears soaking into Annie's dress. Annie felt something settle inside her chest, something heavy and warm at the same time. "I can tell her," she said. I can tell my aunt. The man's eyes locked onto hers. You will? He asked, almost afraid to believe it. Annie nodded. Yes, I promise. The word promise felt big, bigger than she was, but she said it anyway. The man's breathing grew rougher. With trembling fingers, he reached into his jacket and pulled something out slowly, like even that small movement hurt. He pressed it into Annie's hand. The photograph. Give her this, he whispered. So she knows I remembered. So she knows I never forgot her. Or him. Annie closed her fingers around it, the paper warm against her skin. I will, she said. The man's hand fell away. His eyes fluttered, struggling to stay open. Tell her, he murmured, his voice fading. Tell her I should have been better. I will, Annie said again, louder this time. I promise. His chest rose once, then fell too fast. His head rolled slightly to the side. No, Annie said, panic breaking through her careful voice. Don't sleep, please. Her brother began to cry openly now, his small body shaking. Annie wrapped one arm around him and raised her voice. Help, she shouted. Please, someone help him. The man didn't answer. His body lay frighteningly still. Annie dropped to her knees beside him, still clutching the photograph. She didn't fully understand what had just happened, only that a grown man had looked at her and trusted her with something he couldn't carry anymore. And even at 6 years old, Annie knew this much was true. Some apologies came too late, but carrying them forward could still change everything. Annie did not remember when the sirens arrived. Later, people would tell her they came quickly, that someone must have called right away, that the flashing lights cut through the night like a blade. But all Annie remembered was the weight of her brother in her arms and the photograph pressed so tightly in her fist that its edges left faint marks on her palm. Men's voices filled the space. Heavy shoes, hands that were not hers lifting the man from the ground. Someone gently pulling her brother away. Someone else asking questions she didn't know how to answer. Sweetheart, what's your name? How old are you? Did you see what happened? Annie nodded when she meant no. She shook her head when she meant maybe. Her brother cried until his voice turned hoarse, then went quiet, his small body sagging with exhaustion as a paramedic wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Annie stayed very still. She watched the man, the one who had asked her to carry his apology, being lifted onto a stretcher. His eyes were closed now. Tubes and straps surrounded him, making him look smaller somehow, less powerful than he had seemed only moments before. For the first time, Annie realized something that frightened her more than his collapse. He might not wake up. The thought landed inside her like a stone. If this moment stayed with you, if it made you pause or feel something you did not expect, please take a second to show your support. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments where you are watching, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find their way to you. Annie, her mother's voice cut through the noise. Not loud, not panicked, but sharp with fear held tightly in check. Annie turned just as her mother reached her, kneeling and pulling both children into her arms at once. Oh my God, her mother whispered, pressing her lips to Annie's hair, then to her son's forehead. I told you not to go so close. I told you. Her voice broke. She stopped herself and pulled back, forcing her hands to still as she looked them over. No blood, no visible bruises, just fear. We were selling flowers, Annie said quietly. Her voice sounded older than it should have. He fell down. Her mother followed Annie's gaze to the ambulance as the doors closed. She frowned, something tightening behind her eyes. Did he touch you? She asked. Did anyone? No, Annie said quickly. He talked to me. Her mother stiffened. What did he say? Annie hesitated. The photograph felt heavy now, even through the thin fabric of her dress. She glanced down at her brother, who leaned against their mother's chest, eyes half closed. He asked me to tell Auntie something, Annie said. Her mother froze. What? She said softly. Annie looked up at her. He said to tell her he's sorry. For a moment, her mother said nothing. The noise around them seemed to fade, like it had for the man earlier. Her face drained of color. Then slowly, carefully, she took a breath. Who asked you that? She said. Annie pointed at the ambulance. Her mother's eyes followed, narrowing slightly as understanding struggled to find its place. That man? Annie nodded. Her mother looked away, toward the street, toward a place far past the flashing lights. When she spoke again, her voice was low. Did he say why? Annie shook her head. Then she added, because it felt important. He didn't talk to my brother. He looked at him, but my brother was scared. He told me to do it instead. Her mother closed her eyes. In that moment, Annie saw something shift in her. A door opening to a room her mother had kept locked for years. We're going home, her mother said finally. Now, the walk back felt longer than usual. Annie held her brother's hand the whole way. He didn't ask questions. He rarely did. He trusted Annie to understand things for him. When they reached the apartment, their mother locked the door behind them and leaned against it for a long second, her shoulders sagging. Then she straightened and went to the kitchen, filling a glass of water she didn't drink. Annie watched her, unsure whether to speak. Go sit, her mother said without turning around. Both of you. Annie guided her brother to the couch. He curled up immediately, small and exhausted, his thumb finding its way to his mouth before sleep took him. Annie stayed sitting upright, her feet dangling above the floor. The photograph was still in her hand. Her mother noticed it at the same time Annie realized she hadn't let go. Her mother's eyes widened, then hardened. Where did you get that? Annie swallowed. He gave it to me. Silence fell between them. Her mother crossed the room slowly and took the photograph from Annie's hand. She stared at it for a long time, her fingers trembling. I told you never to touch this, she said, though there was no anger in her voice, only fear. I didn't, Annie said. I just held it. Her mother sat beside her. Annie, she said, choosing each word carefully. Some things are not for children. Annie looked at her. He looked like he was dying. Her mother flinched. He asked me, Annie continued. If it was bad, why did he ask me? Her mother closed her eyes again. When she opened them, there were tears there, but she didn't let them fall. Because sometimes, she said slowly, adults wait too long to say what matters. Annie thought about that. Will Auntie be mad? She asked. Her mother looked toward the bedroom down the hall, where her sister lay most days, caught between sleep and waking. No, she said quietly. She'll be hurt. Annie nodded. That made sense. They sat there for a while, listening to her brother's soft breathing. Outside, the night continued as if nothing had happened. Finally, her mother spoke again. Tomorrow, she said, we'll see what happens. Until then, you don't say anything to anyone. Not at school. Not outside. Do you understand? Annie nodded, but as she lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, the man's voice echoed in her mind. Tell her I'm sorry. Annie didn't know much about apologies. She only knew that he had trusted her with his, and she didn't think trust was something you were allowed to ignore. Morning came quietly. Annie woke before anyone else, the way she often did when her mind was too full to rest. Pale light slipped through the thin curtains, settling on the cracked ceiling above her bed. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, to a car passing outside, to the soft, uneven breathing coming from the other room. Her brother. She slid out of bed and padded down the short hallway. He was curled on the couch, knees drawn to his chest, one arm tucked beneath his chin. In sleep, he looked even smaller, his face smooth and untroubled, as if the night before had never happened. Annie watched him for a long moment. The man's voice returned to her without warning. Tell her I'm sorry. Annie pressed her lips together. She didn't know why the words felt heavier in the morning. Maybe because daylight made things real in a way darkness didn't. She turned toward the bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was open, just a little. Inside, her aunt lay on her side, facing the wall. Her hair, once thick and carefully braided, spread thin across the pillow. Some days she was awake, some days she wasn't, and some days she was awake but not really there. Annie stood in the doorway, unsure. Her mother was already in the kitchen, moving quietly, as if sound itself might break something fragile. She looked tired, older than she had the day before. When she noticed Annie, she stopped. Did you sleep? She asked. Annie nodded. It wasn't exactly a lie. Her mother studied her face for a moment, then glanced down the hallway. Your aunt's awake. she said softly. Not fully, but awake. Annie's stomach tightened. Her mother turned back to the counter, her hands busy with motions she'd done 1,000 times. Coffee, bread, a pot on the stove. We don't have to talk to her today, she added. You're just a child. This isn't your responsibility. Annie looked down at her feet. She knew her mother meant it. She also knew it wasn't true. He asked me, Annie said. Her mother didn't respond right away. He didn't ask you because it was right, her mother said finally. He asked because it was easier. Annie frowned. It didn't look easy. Her mother closed her eyes, just for a second. Some men, she said quietly, wait until they're on the ground before they tell the truth. Annie thought about that. She thought about how the man had looked at her brother, how his eyes had changed when he realized the boy was afraid, how he had turned away, choosing Annie instead. He didn't want to scare him, Annie said. Her mother's hands stilled. What? He said he didn't have the right, Annie continued. He said my brother wouldn't listen, that he didn't want his last memory to be bad. Her mother's shoulders sagged, as if something she'd been holding up for years had finally slipped. That sounds like him, she murmured. Annie looked up. You know him? Her mother hesitated, then nodded slowly. I knew who he was, she said. A long time ago. Silence settled between them. He's in the hospital, Annie said. Is he going to die? Her mother turned and looked at her fully now. I don't know, she said honestly. But even if he lives, some things don't change. Annie reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out the photograph. She had hidden it there before going to bed, afraid someone might take it away. She held it out with both hands. He gave me this, she said. For Auntie. Her mother stared at the photograph as if it might burn her. Slowly, she took it. I promised him, Annie added. I said I would tell her. Her mother's eyes filled, but she didn't wipe them away. Annie, she said, her voice shaking despite her effort to keep it steady. Do you know what it means to keep a promise like that? Annie thought for a moment. It means you don't forget, she said. Even when it hurts. Her mother let out a long breath. Go sit with your brother, she said. I need to think. Annie obeyed, though her eyes kept drifting toward the bedroom. Later, after breakfast, after her brother had woken and eaten slowly, carefully, her mother stood in the hallway and looked at both of them. I'm going to sit with your aunt, she said. You two stay here. Annie opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. She watched her mother disappear into the bedroom and pull the door mostly shut. Time passed strangely after that. Minutes stretched. Sounds drifted out, soft words, then silence, then a quiet sob. Annie pretended not to hear. Her brother leaned against her. Are we in trouble? He asked. No, Annie said. I don't think so. Why were you talking to that man? He asked, his voice small. Annie didn't answer right away. She brushed her fingers through his hair, the way her mother sometimes did when she wanted him to feel safe. He needed help, she said finally. Her brother frowned. I didn't like him. I know, Annie said. He knew that too. The bedroom door opened. Their mother stepped out slowly. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but something else was there too, something like resolve. She knows, their mother said. Annie's heart pounded. What did she say? Her mother swallowed. She cried, she said. Then she laughed. Then she asked if it was raining. Annie nodded. That sounded like her aunt. She remembered him, her mother continued. Just for a moment. She asked if he was still proud. Annie's chest tightened. What did you say? I said I didn't know, her mother replied. Because I don't. She looked at Annie carefully. You shouldn't have had to carry this, she said. But you did. And now we'll all have to live with it. Annie looked down at her hands. They were empty now, but she could still feel the weight of the photograph. The promise pressed into her palm. Is he coming here? Annie asked. Her mother shook her head. No, not yet. His life's. Annie nodded, though something inside her told her this was not the end. That afternoon, a phone rang. Her mother answered it in the kitchen, her back turned. Annie couldn't hear the words, only the tone, tight, careful, afraid of hope. When her mother hung up, she stood very still. What is it? Annie asked. Her mother turned around slowly. "That man," she said. "He's awake." Annie's breath caught. "He asked for us," her mother added. "For your aunt, and for you," was Miter. Annie didn't know why, but she felt it then deep in her bones. Whatever apology she carried, it wasn't finished yet. The hospital smelled like something Annie couldn't name. Not like home, not like school, not like the alley behind the theater. It was clean, but not comforting. The air felt thin, as if it didn't quite belong to anyone. Annie held her brother's hand tightly as they followed their mother through the sliding doors, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by polished floors. Her brother walked slower than usual. He always did when he was nervous. His fingers curled around Annie's like he was afraid she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "Is he mad?" he whispered. Annie shook her head. "No," she said, though she wasn't sure. "He just wants to talk." Their mother glanced back at them. "You don't have to say anything," she reminded Annie gently. "You don't have to promise anything. You just listen." Annie nodded. Listening was something she knew how to do. They stopped in front of a door. A nurse stepped out, smiling in a way that tried very hard to be kind. "He's awake," the nurse said. "Not for long stretches, but he's been asking for the little girl." Annie felt her stomach flip. "That's her," her mother said quietly. The nurse looked surprised for just a moment, then stepped aside. "You can go in." Just for a few minutes. The room was small, too quiet. The man lay in the bed, propped up by pillows, his skin still pale, but no longer gray. Tubes ran from his arms. Machines blinked softly beside him, their steady rhythm the only sound. His eyes were closed when Annie entered. For a second, she thought maybe the nurse had been wrong. Maybe he wasn't really awake. Then his eyes opened. They found Annie immediately. "There you are," he said, his voice weak but clearer than before. Annie stopped near the foot of the bed. She didn't let go of her brother. He stood half hidden behind her, his face pressed into her shoulder. "You scared us," Annie said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The man let out a slow breath. "I'm sorry," he said. "For that too." Her mother stepped forward slightly. "You asked for us," she said. Her tone was calm, but Annie could hear something tight underneath it. "Why?" The man looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes softened, and something like shame crossed his face. "I didn't think I'd get another chance," he said. "I wasn't sure I deserved one. He shifted, wincing slightly, then turned his attention back to Annie. "Did you keep it?" he asked. Annie nodded. "Yes. And the message?" he asked. "Did you tell her?" Annie hesitated. She glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod. "I did," Annie said. She cried. Then she forgot. Then she remembered a little. The man closed his eyes. "That sounds like her," he murmured. Annie took a step closer. "You asked me something," she said. "I didn't understand then." To any eyes. He opened his eyes again. "Ask me now," he said. Annie swallowed. "Why didn't you tell my brother?" she asked. "He was right there." "You looked at him?" The man's gaze drifted to the small boy pressed against Annie's side. The boy shook his head. Just once, barely noticeable. "I saw him," the man said quietly. "And I saw myself. Or the part of myself I left behind." Her brother whimpered softly. The man raised his hand slightly, then stopped, letting it fall back onto the blanket. "I didn't want to frighten him," he said. "I didn't want the first thing he knew about me to be fear. He was already scared," Annie said. "Yes," the man replied. "Because I waited too long." Silence filled the room. Her mother spoke then. "You waited years," she said. "You waited while my sister got sick, while her son grew up without a father, while my daughter learned to carry responsibilities that weren't hers." The man nodded. "I know," he said. "There's no excuse that makes that right." Annie looked between them. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the feeling. It felt like standing between two things that were pulling apart and hoping they wouldn't tear. "Are you his dad?" her brother asked suddenly, his voice trembling. Everyone froze. The man stared at the boy. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded. Once, slowly. Yes, he said. I am. Eyes. Her brother sucked in a sharp breath and hid his face again. I don't want one, he whispered. The man didn't flinch. I know, he said. You don't have to want anything. I'm not asking you for that. Annie frowned. Then why did you ask us to come? The man looked tired suddenly. Older than 40. Older than Annie had ever imagined a person could feel. Because I needed you to hear me say it while I was awake, he said, not whispered on the ground, not borrowed through someone else's voice. He looked at Annie's mother. I'm sorry, he said, for choosing my career over my child, for choosing silence over courage. Her mother's jaw tightened. Sorry doesn't fix everything. No, he agreed, but it's where I start. Annie watched his face carefully. Are you going to leave again? She asked. The question hung in the air. The man shook his head. No, he said. Not this time. Her brother peeked out, eyes red and suspicious. You say that, he muttered. You don't have to believe me, the man said gently. Not yet, or ever, but I will show up. Even if you never call me anything. Annie felt something shift inside her. Not relief, not trust. Something quieter. Her mother took a step back. We'll see, she said. We don't promise anything either. That's fair, the man replied. A nurse appeared at the door. He needs to rest, she said softly. Annie nodded. She felt suddenly tired, like something heavy had been set down and her body was just realizing it. As they turned to leave, the man spoke again. Annie, he said. She looked back. Thank you, he said, for not running away. Annie thought about that. Then she said, I didn't know I was allowed to. They walked out of the room together. In the hallway, her brother leaned against her again. Are we going home? He asked. Yes, her mother said. We're going home. With Isa. As they stepped outside, Annie looked back once more at the closed door. She had carried an apology into the hospital. She was leaving with something heavier. Responsibility. Home felt smaller when they returned. Annie noticed it as soon as the door closed behind them, the way the walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower, the air heavier. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The couch where her brother slept most nights was still pushed against the wall. The table still wobbled if you leaned on it wrong. The faint smell of boiled coffee lingered from the morning, but something invisible had followed them back from the hospital. Her brother dropped onto the couch without a word and pulled his knees up, turning his face toward the wall. He didn't cry this time. That frightened Annie more than his tears ever did. Their mother stood in the middle of the room, purse still on her shoulder, as if she hadn't decided yet whether to stay or leave again. She set the purse down slowly, then pressed her hands flat against the table. No more questions today, she said. All right? Annie nodded. Her brother did not. He said he was my dad. Her brother muttered into the couch. His voice was muffled, angry and small at the same time. I don't want him. Annie sat beside him. She didn't touch him right away. You don't have to, she said carefully. He said that. That's easy for him, her brother snapped. He wasn't the one waiting. Their mother flinched. Annie felt something twist inside her chest. She had learned early that waiting was dangerous. Waiting made you hope. Hope made things hurt worse when they didn't come true. He's sick, Annie said. He almost died. Her brother turned his head just enough to look at her. So? Annie didn't have an answer. Their mother sank into the chair by the window and rubbed her temples. For a long moment, no one spoke. The afternoon light crept across the floor, touching Annie's shoes, then her knees, then moving on. He will call, their mother said finally. He will want to help, her brother scoffed. Now, it is Steve Mile. Yes, she said. Now, Annie studied her mother's face. There was anger there, but also something else. Fear, maybe, or exhaustion. What if we say no? Annie asked. Her mother looked at her then. We might, she said. We're allowed to. That surprised Annie. Her mother stood and walked to the small bedroom at the end of the hall. Annie watched her go, then followed quietly. Her aunt lay on the bed, eyes open but unfocused, staring at the ceiling as if watching something no one else could see. The room smelled faintly of medicine and old sheets. "Hey," Annie said softly. Her aunt turned her head slowly. Recognition flickered, then faded, then returned again. "Annie," she said. Her voice was thin, but warm. "You're tall today," Annie smiled. "You say that every time." Her aunt smiled too, then frowned. "Do I?" "Yes," Annie said gently. Her mother stood near the door. "She's tired," she said. "We shouldn't stay long." Her aunt's gaze drifted past Annie, toward the doorway. "Did he come?" she asked suddenly. Annie felt her breath catch. "Who?" her mother asked, though she already knew. "The man who never learned how to knock," her aunt said. "The one who thought he could leave and come back whenever he wanted." Her mother stiffened. Annie took a small step forward. "He's at the hospital," she said. "He's sick." "I way." Her aunt closed her eyes. "That figures. He said he was sorry," Annie added. "He asked me to tell you." Her aunt's eyelids fluttered. For a moment, she looked very old. "Did he?" she murmured. "After all this time, yes," Annie said. "He gave me the picture." Her aunt's lips curved into something like a smile, though tears slipped out from the corners of her eyes. "He always hated that picture," she said. "Said it made him look weak." Annie frowned. "He didn't look weak. Just as Nina's." Her aunt laughed softly, a sound that quickly turned into a cough. "That's because you don't know what men like him are afraid of." Her mother stepped forward. "You don't have to think about this now," she said firmly. "You need rest." Her aunt reached out and caught her sister's wrist. "No," she said. "Let me have this." She turned back to Annie. "What else did he say?" Annie hesitated, then answered honestly. "He said he should have been better." Her aunt nodded slowly. "That's the part he always understood. He just never acted on it." Silence settled over the room. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. Annie thought about the man in the hospital bed, his voice rough with regret. She thought about her brother curled up on the couch, his anger sharper than his fear. She thought about her aunt, trapped between memories and forgetting. "Is saying sorry enough?" Annie asked quietly. Her aunt looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "No." Annie felt strangely relieved. "But," her aunt continued, "it's the first honest thing he's done in years." That night, Annie lay awake listening to the familiar sounds of home. Her brother shifted on the couch. Her mother moved quietly in the kitchen. Her aunt murmured something unintelligible in her sleep. Annie stared at the ceiling and thought about promises. Some were made too late, some were made too early, and some, once spoken, refused to be set down again. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew this: whatever came after the apology would not be simple. The call came the next morning. Annie heard the phone ring from the hallway, sharp and insistent, cutting through the quiet of the apartment. Her mother answered it in the kitchen, her voice low, careful, the way it always was when something important waited on the other end. Annie sat on the floor with her brother, lining up his toy cars in neat rows. He moved them without enthusiasm, his attention drifting, his eyes unfocused. "Yes," her mother said. "I understand." A pause. "No," she continued. "I didn't say that." Another pause, longer this time. Annie watched her mother's shoulders tense, then slowly relax. "All right," her mother said at last. "We'll talk about it." She hung up and stood still for several seconds, staring at the wall as if it might offer her an answer. "Was it him?" Annie asked. Her mother nodded. "Yes." Her brother's hand tightened around a small red car. "I don't want to go back there," he said immediately. "I don't want to see him again." Her mother crouched down in front of him. "You don't have to," she said firmly. "No one is forcing you." "Then why did he call?" he asked, his voice rising. Her mother hesitated. "Because he wants to do things properly," she said. "Because he knows he can't fix the past, but he wants to be part of the present." Her brother shook his head. "He doesn't get to decide that." "No," her mother agreed. "He doesn't." Annie looked between them. "What does he want?" she asked. Her mother exhaled slowly. "He wants to help with your aunt's care," she said. Doctors. Therapy. A place that's safe. Her brother scoffed. Now he remembers. Her mother closed her eyes. Yes, she said. Now, that afternoon, a car pulled up outside the apartment building. Not the kind Annie saw every day. Dark, quiet, expensive. It idled for a moment, then the engine shut off. Annie felt it before she saw it, the shift in the air. The way her mother's body stiffened as she looked out the window. He's here, her mother said. I don't want to see him, her brother whispered. You don't have to, her mother repeated. You can stay in the bedroom. Annie stood. I'll stay with him, she said. Her mother looked at her, surprised. You don't need to. I want to, Annie said. Her mother nodded once. All right. The knock came moments later, polite, controlled, not rushed. Her mother opened the door. The man stood in the hallway, dressed simply now. No suit, no crowd, no distance between him and the consequences of his choices. His face was still pale, his movements careful, as if his body hadn't fully forgiven him yet. Thank you for seeing me, he said. Her mother didn't invite him in right away. This isn't a visit, she said. This is a conversation. I understand, he replied. She stepped aside. He entered slowly, his eyes scanning the small apartment, taking in the worn furniture, the narrow space, the signs of a life lived carefully. His gaze lingered on the closed bedroom door. They don't have to come out, he said quietly. They won't, her mother replied. He nodded. That's fair. They sat at the table. Annie listened from the bedroom doorway. Her brother pressed against her side, his breath shallow. I've arranged for a specialist, the man said. Someone experienced with memory trauma and physical rehabilitation. Her mother folded her arms. We didn't ask you to. No, he said. But she needs it. She needs consistency, her mother countered. Not guilt. He flinched, just slightly. I know, he said. This isn't about easing my conscience. Her mother's laugh was short and humorless. Everything you're doing now is about your conscience. He didn't deny it. Maybe, he said, but that doesn't make it useless. Silence stretched. Annie felt her brother tense beside her. Where were you when she got sick? Her mother asked suddenly. The man looked down. Running from responsibility, he said. And when your son was born weak and shaking? Her mother pressed. Listening to my parents tell me he would ruin my future, he replied. And you believed them? Yes, her mother stood. Then don't stand in my home and tell me what my sister needs. The man rose too, but he didn't raise his voice. I'm not here to tell you, he said. I'm here to ask. Annie's heart pounded. Ask what? Her mother said. To be allowed to help, he said. On your terms. Silence. From the bedroom, Annie's brother whispered. Make him go away. Annie wrapped her arms around him. Her mother closed her eyes, then opened them again. You don't get access, she said. You don't get authority, and you don't get forgiveness. The man nodded. Understood. But, she continued, you can pay for her care. Quietly, no strings. Relief flickered across his face, quickly contained. Thank you, he said. That's not gratitude, she warned. That's boundaries. He inclined his head. I'll respect them. As he turned to leave, he paused near the bedroom door. I know you're there, he said softly. Annie didn't respond. I won't come back unless you say so, he continued. And I won't ask again. The door closed behind him. Annie felt her brother sag against her. Is he gone? He asked. Yes, Annie said. Her mother leaned against the table, suddenly exhausted. That night, Annie lay awake thinking about boundaries, about how adults built them too late, after the damage was done. She wondered if apologies were meant to heal, or just to mark the place where healing might someday begin. The money arrived without ceremony. No envelope, no announcement. Just a call from a clinic Annie's mother had never heard of, followed by paperwork that arrived the next day in a plain brown folder. The kind of folder that didn't look important until you opened it and realized how much weight it carried. Her mother read every page twice. Annie watched from the table, swinging her legs, listening to the rustle of paper and the quiet sighs that followed. It's real, her mother said finally. Her brother looked up. What is? A place for your aunt, she replied. Doctors. Physical therapy. Someone who knows how to handle memory loss. Her brother's face hardened. Because of him. Yes, her mother said. Because of him. Annie waited for anger, for shouting, for the kind of rejection she'd learned to expect when things felt unfair. But none came. Instead, her mother folded the papers neatly and placed them back into the folder. We'll visit, she said. We'll decide after. Annie felt something loosen in her chest. The clinic was 2 bus rides away, in a part of the city Annie had never seen before. Quieter streets, wider sidewalks, trees that looked cared for. Her aunt sat in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap, her expression distant but calm. She didn't ask where they were. She didn't ask who paid for it. She only asked one thing. Is it morning? She said. Yes, Annie answered. That's good, her aunt replied. Mornings mean you still have time to do better. Annie didn't know who she meant. The doctor spoke gently, slowly, like he understood that speed was the enemy here. He explained things to Annie's mother, not to Annie, but Annie listened anyway. Progress wouldn't be fast. It might never be complete. Some memories would return, others wouldn't. But, the doctor said, stability matters. Familiar faces. Routine. Her mother nodded. We can do that. The doctor glanced at the folder. The benefactor has agreed to remain anonymous, he said. Annie's mother's lips pressed together. He's not anonymous to us. That night, her brother asked the question Annie had been avoiding. Is he coming back? He said. Annie hesitated. He said he wouldn't unless we said so. Her brother frowned. Do you want him to? Annie didn't answer right away. She thought about the man's face in the hospital, about the way his voice had changed when he looked at her brother, about how he had not tried to touch him, not tried to claim him. I don't know, Annie said honestly. I think he's scared. Her brother snorted. Good. Annie looked at him. Scared people do bad things sometimes. Her brother considered that. Does that mean we have to forgive them? Annie shook her head. No. That answer seemed to satisfy him. Days passed. Her aunt began therapy. Slowly, painfully. Some mornings she remembered Annie's name. Some mornings she didn't remember how to hold a spoon. Her mother took on extra shifts. Annie helped where she could, warming soup, folding laundry, keeping her brother distracted when the silence grew too heavy. And sometimes, Annie thought about the man, not with anger, not with gratitude, with curiosity. One afternoon, as Annie walked home from school with her brother, a familiar car idled across the street. Not close, not approaching, just there. Her brother noticed it too. His grip tightened. He said he wouldn't come, he whispered. He said he wouldn't come without asking, Annie corrected. The window rolled down slowly. The man didn't get out. I won't stay, he said, his voice carrying just far enough. I just needed to know if she was all right. Annie took a step forward before her brother could stop her. She's trying, Annie said. That's the best answer I have. The man nodded. That's more than I deserve. Her brother said nothing. I'll go, the man said. I meant what I said. Annie hesitated. Then she asked, Are you still sorry? The question hung between them. Yes, he said. Every day. Annie nodded once. The car drove away. Her brother exhaled. I thought he was going to come closer. So did I, Annie admitted. That night, Annie wrote something for the first time. Not for school, not for anyone else. Just a sentence, written carefully on a scrap of paper. Sorry doesn't fix everything, but it tells the truth. She folded it and placed it inside the photograph, then hid both beneath her mattress. Some truths didn't belong to the world yet. Time changed shape after that. Not all at once, not dramatically. It bent slowly, quietly, the way something fragile does when you stop forcing it to hold. Annie noticed it first in the mornings. Her aunt began waking earlier, asking for the window to be opened, asking what day it was and accepting the answer without anger. Some days she remembered the clinic. Some days she thought she was still 25 and waiting for a train that never came. But she smiled more now. She laughed, sometimes at nothing at all. Laughing means the pain loosened its grip, her therapist said one afternoon. Annie held on to that. Her brother changed too, though he would never admit it. He stopped flinching every time a dark car passed their building. He stopped sleeping with the blanket pulled over his head. He still didn't like questions, but he asked more of them now about school, about food, about why people left and sometimes came back. One evening, as Annie helped him with his shoes, he asked quietly, "Do you think people can disappear without meaning to?" Annie paused. "No," she said. "But I think some people don't understand the damage until they see it." Her brother nodded slowly, like that answer fit somewhere inside him. The man didn't come back. Weeks passed, then a month. The clinic bills were paid on time. Supplies arrived without notes. When her aunt needed a new chair, it was delivered without explanation. Her mother didn't thank anyone. She didn't refuse either. One afternoon, Annie came home to find her mother sitting at the table with the photograph in front of her. Not holding it, just looking. Annie froze. "I wasn't snooping," her mother said without looking up. "Your aunt asked for it." Annie swallowed. "Did she remember?" Her mother nodded. "Enough." Annie sat down slowly. "What did she say?" she said. Her mother replied, "Tell him I forgive him for leaving, but not for waiting." Annie felt her chest tighten. "Is that bad?" she asked. "No," her mother said quietly. "It's honest." That night, Annie dreamed of a road she had never walked before. It stretched forward without signs, without lights. She stood in the middle of it, holding the photograph, unsure which way to turn. When she woke, she felt older. The call came on a Tuesday. Her mother answered it, listened, then sat down hard in the chair by the wall. "He wants to see your aunt," she said after she hung up. "Once." With a doctor present, her brother stiffened. "No." Her mother looked at him. She said yes. Silence fell. "He doesn't get to decide," her brother said, louder now. "No," her mother agreed. "She does." Annie watched her brother's face. The anger was still there. So was fear. But beneath it, something else had begun to grow: curiosity, maybe, or exhaustion. The meeting happened in a small room at the clinic. Neutral walls, soft chairs, a doctor seated between them like a bridge no one was sure would hold. The man looked thinner than Annie remembered, not weaker, just stripped of unnecessary weight. He didn't smile when he entered. He didn't speak until spoken to. Her aunt stared at him for a long moment. "You took your time," she said. "Yes," he replied. "I did." "Do you still think you were right?" she asked. "No," he said simply. She nodded, as if that settled something. "I won't punish you," she said. "Life already did." He closed his eyes. "You don't get to be my savior," she continued. "But you can be accountable." "I can do that," he said. She studied him. "You don't look like a hero." "I'm not," he replied. Her brother shifted uncomfortably beside Annie. His eyes never left the floor. The doctor cleared his throat. "We'll keep this brief." Her aunt waved him off. "I'm done," she said. As they stood to leave, the man turned toward Annie's brother, stopping several feet away. "I won't ask you for anything," he said. "I won't explain myself, and I won't expect forgiveness." Her brother looked up then. His voice was quiet. "Then why are you here?" The man met his gaze. "Because pretending you don't exist almost destroyed me," he said. "And I won't do that again." Her brother said nothing. As they left the room, Annie felt something shift, not resolve, not peace, but movement. Like a door cracking open, just enough to let air through. Outside, her brother finally spoke. "I still don't like him," he said. Annie nodded. "That's okay. But," he added, after a pause, "I don't think he's lying." Annie didn't respond. She didn't need to. Some truths didn't demand agreement, only acknowledgement. That night, Annie took the photograph from beneath her mattress. She unfolded the scrap of paper she had written weeks ago and read it again. "Sorry doesn't fix everything, but it tells the truth." She slipped the paper back inside, then did something new. She placed the photograph on her bedside table, where she could see it, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that silence could be broken. The school sent the note home on a Thursday. Annie found it folded inside her backpack, creased and soft from being handled too many times. She didn't open it right away. She already knew what it would say. She had felt it all day in the way her teacher's voice had softened. in the way the other kids had looked at her brother and then quickly looked away. Her mother read it standing by the sink, her face unreadable until she finished. Then she folded it once and set it down. "They want to talk," she said. Annie sat at the table, her feet tucked beneath the chair. "About him?" she asked. Her mother nodded. "About your brother. About attendance. About concentration. He's trying," Annie said quickly. "I know," her mother replied. That's not always what institutions measure. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Until then, life continued in its careful rhythm. Clinic visits, homework, dinner made from whatever was left in the fridge. Annie learned how to recognize the quiet moments when her brother needed space and the louder ones when he needed distraction. On Sunday night, he couldn't sleep. Annie lay awake beside him on the couch, listening to his breathing turn shallow, then uneven. "Annie," he whispered, "what if they take me away?" She turned toward him. "Who? School," he said. "Or him. No one's taking you," she said firmly. He stared at the ceiling. Adults always say that. Annie thought about it. About promises made too late. About apologies carried by children. "I won't let them," she said. He turned his head and looked at her. "You can't stop everything." "No," she admitted. "But I can stay." That seemed to help. He closed his eyes. The school office smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. The principal sat behind a desk too large for the room. Her smile practiced. Her tone careful. "We're concerned," she said. "He's bright, but he's distracted. He doesn't participate." "Well then to the Siri." Her mother nodded. "He's been through changes. We all have," the principal replied. "But structure is important." Annie watched her brother shrink into his chair, his shoulders curling inward. "He doesn't like to talk," Annie said suddenly. The adults turned toward her, surprised. "He listens," Annie continued. "He notices things. He just doesn't like being watched." The principal smiled politely. "That's very thoughtful, Annie. But he doesn't need punishment," Annie said, her voice shaking despite herself. "He needs time." Silence filled the room. Her mother placed a hand on Annie's shoulder. "We're working with doctors," she said calmly, "and family." The principal glanced at her notes. Family support does make a difference. Annie didn't miss the way she avoided eye contact when she said it. Afterward, as they walked home, her brother kicked at the sidewalk. "They think I'm broken," he muttered. Annie stopped walking. "No," she said. "They think you don't fit their schedule." He looked up at her. "What's the difference?" She thought about that longer than she should have had to. That afternoon, the man called. He didn't ask for her brother. He didn't ask for her aunt. He asked for Annie. "I heard about the school," he said carefully. "Your mother told me." Annie frowned. "She said you weren't allowed to interfere." "I won't," he said. "I just want you to know something." "What?" "There are ways to help that don't involve taking control," he said. "Tutors, smaller environments, advocates." Annie was quiet. "You don't trust me," he said. "No," Annie agreed. "That's fair," he said. "But trust isn't the only way people can be useful." Annie thought about that. "Why are you telling me?" she asked. "Because," he said, "you're the one who sees the whole picture." Annie didn't respond. That night, she lay awake again, staring at the photograph on her bedside table. The faces in it looked younger than they had any right to be, like people who still believed time would wait for them. She wondered what it meant to be useful without being forgiven. The next morning, her brother surprised her. "I want to see him," he said over breakfast. Their mother froze. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "But I want to." Annie watched his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was resolved in a way she'd never seen before. "I want to ask him something," he added. They met at the clinic again. Same room, same neutral chairs. The man stood when they entered, then sat again, careful not to crowd them. The boy didn't hide this time. "Why didn't you come back?" he asked. The man didn't flinch. "Because I was afraid of failing you again." "That's stupid," the boy said flatly. "Yes," the man agreed. The boy crossed his arms. "Are you going to leave again?" "I don't plan to," the man said. "But plans aren't guarantees." The boy considered that. At least you're not lying. The man nodded. That's the best I can offer. Annie watched them, her chest tight. Somewhere between apology and forgiveness, something else was being built. Not trust, but truth. The second meeting did not end with hugs. Annie noticed that right away. There were no tears this time either. Just words, spoken plainly, and a quiet that felt earned rather than forced. When they left the clinic, her brother didn't rush ahead or lag behind. He walked beside Annie, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders squared in a way that looked deliberate. He didn't lie, he said as they reached the bus stop. Annie nodded. No, that doesn't mean I trust him, he added quickly. I know, Annie said. Their mother watched them from a few steps back, her face unreadable. Annie had learned to recognize that look. It meant she was thinking several moves ahead, weighing outcomes that never appeared on paper. The bus ride home was quiet. The city passed by in fragments: brick buildings, corner stores, people moving with purpose. Annie pressed her forehead against the cool glass and thought about truth. Truth didn't fix things. It didn't erase years or soften memories, but it gave shape to what came next. Without it, everything stayed blurry. Like her aunt's worst days, that evening, her mother cooked more than usual. Chicken, rice, vegetables cut carefully, as if precision might hold something together. Her aunt ate slowly, methodically. Who came to see me today? She asked. Halfway through her meal, her mother hesitated. The man from before, Annie said gently. Her aunt nodded. Ah, the late one. Yes, her mother said. Her aunt chewed thoughtfully. Did he apologize again? He listened, Annie replied. Her aunt smiled faintly. That's harder. After dinner, her brother surprised everyone by clearing the table without being asked. He stacked the plates carefully, his movements controlled. Later, when Annie found him sitting on the floor by the couch, staring at nothing, she sat beside him. You okay? She asked. He shrugged. I keep thinking about what he said. I do not. What part? That plans aren't guarantees. Annie nodded. That's true. I don't like it, he said. Me neither. He leaned back against the couch. But I like that he didn't pretend. Annie felt a small, cautious relief. The phone rang the next afternoon. This time, her mother put it on speaker. I've spoken with an educational advocate, the man said. Someone who works with kids who've experienced disruption. Her mother crossed her arms. We didn't agree to that. I know, he said. That's why I'm not scheduling anything. I'm just offering the information. Silence. What kind of disruption? Her mother asked. The man paused. The kind that comes from adults making choices children have to live with. Annie looked at her brother. He was listening closely, his face serious. We'll think about it, her mother said. That's all I'm asking, the man replied. After the call ended, her brother spoke first. I don't want to be fixed, he said. Her mother knelt in front of him. No one is fixing you. I don't want them talking about me like I'm broken. He continued. I won't allow that, she said firmly. Annie added, support isn't the same as fixing. Her brother looked at her skeptically. Sometimes it is. She considered that. Sometimes, she admitted. But sometimes it's just someone standing nearby so you don't have to carry everything alone. He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. A week later, the advocate came to the apartment. Not a man in a suit, not someone who spoke in clipped sentences. A woman with gray hair and calm eyes who sat on the floor to talk to Annie's brother instead of towering over him. I don't work for schools, she said. I work for kids. That got his attention. They talked quietly while Annie did homework at the table. The woman asked questions, but she listened more than she spoke. Before she left, she turned to Annie's mother. He doesn't need correction, she said. He needs safety, predictability, and permission to be exactly where he is. Her mother nodded slowly. Afterward, her brother seemed lighter, not happier, just less tense. She didn't stare, he said. Annie smiled. That matters. That night, Annie dreamed again of the road. This time, there were signs, not directions, just markers showing how far she'd already walked. She woke before dawn and lay still, listening. In the quiet, She realized something had changed. The man was no longer the center of the story. He was part of it. But not the axis. Everything turned on. Later that day, he sent a message through her mother. "I'll step back unless you ask me forward." Her mother read it twice. "That's new," she said. Annie looked up. "What is?" "Someone with power choosing restraint." Annie thought about that. Power didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it showed up in what people didn't do. At dinner, her brother spoke again, his voice steady. "I don't want him gone," he said. "But I don't want him close either." Her mother nodded. "That's allowed." Annie smiled faintly. Somewhere between distance and closeness, a boundary had finally been drawn, not by fear, by choice. The letter arrived on a Friday, not an email, not a message passed through someone else. An actual envelope, cream-colored, thick, with Annie's mother's name written carefully across the front. No return address. Her mother held it for a long moment before opening it, as if weighing whether the paper itself might bite. Annie watched from the table. Her brother sat cross-legged on the floor, pretending not to care, though his eyes kept drifting back. Her mother slid a finger beneath the flap and unfolded the letter slowly. She didn't read it out loud. She read it twice in silence, her face still, controlled, until at last she sat down. "What is it?" Annie asked. Her mother exhaled. "It's from him." Her brother stiffened but didn't interrupt. "He's transferring full legal authority for your aunt's medical decisions to me," her mother continued. "Permanently." Annie blinked. "Why?" "Because," her mother said, choosing her words carefully, "he doesn't trust himself, not to interfere." Her brother looked up sharply. "He can do that?" "Yes," her mother said. "And it costs him something." That got Annie's attention. "What kind of something?" she asked. Her mother hesitated. "Power," she said finally. "Control." Silence filled the room. Her brother stood up slowly. "So he's not in charge?" he said. "No," their mother replied. "We are." "It is nuts." Her brother nodded once, as if confirming a fact he needed anchored. That night, Annie found her mother sitting alone at the table, the letter folded neatly beside her. "You don't have to forgive him," Annie said quietly. Her mother looked at her, surprised. Then she smiled faintly. "I know," she said. "That's the first real gift he's given me." Annie thought about that as she lay in bed later. Some apologies asked for forgiveness. Others proved themselves by stepping aside. The clinic called the following week with an update. Her aunt had taken her first steps with assistance. Not far, not steady, but forward. "She asked for you," the therapist told Annie's mother. "Both of you." They visited that afternoon. Her aunt was sitting by the window, sunlight warming her thin hands. She looked tired, but her eyes were clearer than Annie had seen them in months. "You came back," her aunt said when she saw Annie. "Yes," Annie replied. "I said I would." Her aunt smiled. "You always keep promises." Annie didn't correct her. "Did he write to you?" her aunt asked suddenly. Her mother stiffened. "Yes." Her aunt nodded slowly. "Good. That means he's finally learned the difference between helping and controlling." Annie sat down beside the bed. "Do you miss him?" she asked. Her aunt considered that question carefully. "I miss the man I thought he could be," she said. "Not the one he was." Annie nodded. That answer felt honest. On the way home, her brother broke the silence. "I think he's trying," he said. Annie glanced at him. "Is that okay?" He shrugged. "Trying isn't the same as fixing, but it's better than pretending." That evening, the man called again. He didn't ask for updates. He didn't ask to visit. He asked one thing. "Is she walking?" he said. "Yes," Annie's mother replied. There was a pause. "I'm glad," he said quietly. "Tell her I'm proud of her." "I won't," her mother said. Another pause. Then, softly, "That's fair." After the call ended, Annie realized something had shifted again. The man's voice no longer carried urgency, only concern. At school, Annie's brother had his first good week. No incidents, no notes sent home. His teacher even smiled when Annie's mother picked him up. "He helped another student today," the teacher said, without being asked. On the walk home, Annie nudged him. "What was that about?" He shrugged. He looked lost. Annie smiled. So you stayed. He glanced at her, then looked away. Someone should. That night, Annie took the photograph from her bedside table again. She studied the faces. Once, it had felt like proof of a secret. Now, it felt like evidence of a choice. She slid it back into the drawer, this time without the scrap of paper. The apology no longer needed to be carried. It had found its place. Outside, the city hummed on. Life didn't resolve itself neatly. There were still questions, still distance, still things unsaid. But something steady had begun to grow in the spaces where anger used to live. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, something quieter, accountability. The first real setback came without warning. Annie noticed it in the way her aunt refused to get out of bed one morning. Her face turned toward the wall, her hands clenched beneath the blanket like she was holding on to something invisible. "I'm not going," her aunt said when her mother tried to coax her upright. "Going where?" her mother asked gently. "Anywhere," her aunt replied. "I'm tired of being watched." Annie stood in the doorway, listening. She had learned that some moments were not meant to be entered too quickly. "You're safe," her mother said. "No one is watching you." Her aunt laughed softly. "That's what people say when they don't understand what it feels like to be remembered wrong." The therapist arrived an hour later, calm and patient, kneeling beside the bed instead of standing over it. "Some days will feel like this," she said quietly to Annie's mother. "Progress isn't a straight line." Annie watched her aunt's face. The confusion was back today, thick and heavy, clouding the clarity they had celebrated only days earlier. "I don't want him here," her aunt said suddenly. Annie's chest tightened. "He's not," she said quickly. Her aunt turned her head, eyes sharp for just a second. "Good," she said, "because I can't carry his regret today." That afternoon, Annie's brother came home from school angry. "They changed my seat," he announced, dropping his backpack by the door. "Why?" Annie asked. "So I'd be closer to the teacher," he snapped. "Like I'm a problem," their mother sighed. "Did they explain it to you?" "No," he said. They decided. Annie felt something familiar stir inside her, the quiet fury that came when adults forgot children were people. "He hates that," Annie said later to her mother, when her brother was in the other room. "Being moved without being asked." "I know," her mother replied. "I fought it." Annie hesitated. "Did you win?" Her mother gave a tired smile. "Not yet." That evening, the man called again. Annie listened from the hallway. "I heard she had a rough day," he said. Her mother stiffened. "We didn't ask for updates." "I know," he replied. "The clinic didn't tell me details, just that she was tired." Silence. "I won't come," he added quickly. "I just wanted to acknowledge it." Her mother closed her eyes. "Acknowledgement isn't the same as help." "I know," he said, "but it's all I'm offering today." After the call ended, Annie's mother leaned against the counter. "He's learning," Annie said softly. "Yes," her mother replied, "and learning is slow." That night, Annie's brother sat beside her on the couch, unusually quiet. "I don't like when things go backward," he said. Annie nodded. "Me neither." "Does it mean we did something wrong?" he asked. Annie thought about her aunt, about memory slipping and returning like a tide that obeyed no rules. "No," she said. "It means things are complicated." Her brother frowned. "Adults always say that." "Because it's true," Annie replied, "and because they don't always know what else to say." The next morning, Annie woke to voices in the kitchen. Her mother and her aunt were talking quietly. "I remember him today," her aunt was saying. "Not the good parts, just the waiting." Her mother didn't interrupt. "I waited," her aunt continued, "for years. And then I stopped. That's when I got sick." Ismendov. Annie stood frozen in the hallway. "I don't want him near me," her aunt said. "But I don't want him erased either." Her mother sighed. "You don't have to decide everything at once." "I know," her aunt replied. "But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If I forget again," her aunt said, "don't let him become a ghost." Ghosts hurt more than real people. Annie felt tears sting her eyes. Later that day, Annie went with her mother to the clinic office. They sat across from a social worker who spoke carefully, like words themselves might break something. "There may be days when she regresses," the woman said, "emotionally and cognitively. Annie raised her hand before she could stop herself. "Does that mean we lose everything we gained?" she asked. The woman smiled gently. "No," she said. "It means progress includes remembering and forgetting how to carry pain." On the walk home, Annie thought about that, remembering and forgetting. That night, Annie took the photograph out again. She studied it longer than usual. For the first time, she noticed something she hadn't before. The woman in the picture, her aunt, was not smiling for the man. She was smiling for the child she was holding, small and fragile, pressed against her chest. The man was standing slightly apart. Annie folded the photograph carefully. It wasn't a picture of love. It was a picture of distance, captured before anyone admitted it. The next day, her brother surprised her again. "I told my teacher I don't like being moved without explanation," he said. Annie's eyes widened. "What did she say?" He shrugged. "She apologized." Annie smiled. "That matters." He nodded slowly. "I think so too." That evening, her aunt asked Annie to sit beside her. "You're very quiet today," her aunt said. "I'm thinking," Annie replied. Her aunt smiled faintly. "Thinking is dangerous. It changes things." Annie met her gaze. "So does staying silent." Her aunt's eyes softened. "You're right." Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the small negotiations happening inside one family, one room at a time. Progress was not loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in conversations that didn't end in shouting, in apologies that didn't demand forgiveness, in children learning that their voices mattered even when they trembled. And Annie understood now that moving forward did not mean leaving the past behind. It meant carrying it carefully, without letting it decide who you became. The invitation arrived 3 weeks later. It wasn't formal. No letterhead, no signature at the bottom heavy with titles. Just a single card, thick paper, cream-colored like the last letter, delivered by hand through the clinic's front desk. Her mother read it once, then set it down. "What is it?" Annie asked. Her mother didn't answer right away. She picked the card back up, read it again, then finally said, "He's asking for a meeting." Her brother stiffened. "Again?" "Yes," her mother said, "but not like before." Annie leaned closer. "What does it say?" Her mother handed her the card. It was brief. "I am revising my will. There are things I need to correct while I still can. I will not proceed without your consent. This is not about money. It is about acknowledgement." Annie looked up. "What does acknowledgement mean?" Her mother exhaled slowly. "It means being named." Her brother frowned. "Named for what?" "For existing," her mother replied. Silence settled. That night, Annie couldn't sleep. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, thinking about names. How they stayed with you even when people didn't. How some names were spoken with pride and others only in whispers. She wondered what it felt like to be acknowledged by someone who had pretended you were invisible. In the morning, her aunt surprised them all. "You should go," she said, stirring her oatmeal with slow determination. Her mother froze. "We don't have to." "Yes, you do," her aunt replied, "because pretending this isn't happening costs more than facing it." Her aunt's eyes were clear today, clear enough to be dangerous. "He's afraid," her aunt continued, "and afraid men either disappear or try to rewrite history. This time, make him do neither." Annie watched her mother carefully. She saw the conflict there, protection battling with fatigue. "We don't promise anything," her mother said. Her aunt nodded. "Good. Promises are cheap." The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Not at the clinic, not at the apartment, at a law office downtown. Annie had never been in a place like that before. The walls were too clean, the chairs too firm. Everything looked designed to last longer than the people who sat there. The man stood when they entered. He looked healthier, not healed, just steadier. He didn't smile. "Thank you for coming," he said. Her mother nodded once. "You asked." They sat. The lawyer explained things calmly, clinically, like this was no different than any other revision. Annie listened anyway, catching words like beneficiary, legal recognition, lineage. Her brother shifted uncomfortably beside her. "I want to say something," the man said suddenly, interrupting the lawyer. He turned toward Annie's mother. "This is not about erasing what I failed to do. It's about refusing to let that failure continue after I'm gone. Her mother folded her arms. You don't get absolution through paperwork. I know, he said. That's why I'm not asking for it. He turned to the boy. I will not put my name on you unless you want it, he said. And I will not erase it if you say no. The boy looked at him, stunned. Why would I want it? The man didn't hesitate. You might not. And that's your right. Annie felt her breath catch. The lawyer cleared his throat. Legally, this would mean, stop, her mother said. We understand the legal part. She turned to her son. You don't have to decide today. The boy stared at his hands. Then he said quietly, I don't want your name. The room went still. The man nodded slowly. All right, but, the boy added, his voice trembling, I don't want you to pretend I don't exist either. The man swallowed. I won't, too. Annie felt something crack open inside her chest. Her aunt had been right. This was not about money. It was about being named without being owned. The lawyer made notes. I will include a statement of acknowledgement. The man said, no surname, no obligation, just the truth. Her mother studied him. And when people ask why, I'll tell them, he said. I waited too long. They left the office in silence. Outside, the city felt louder than usual. Her brother walked a few steps ahead, his shoulders tight. Are you okay? Annie asked. He nodded. I think so. You didn't take his name, Annie said gently. I didn't want it, he replied. That doesn't mean you rejected yourself, she said. He looked at her, surprised. Then he nodded. That night, Annie found her mother sitting at the table again. You did good, her mother said quietly. Annie frowned. I didn't do anything. Her mother smiled faintly. You carried the truth when no one else could. Annie thought about the little girl she had been weeks ago, standing over a man who could barely breathe, holding a promise too heavy for her hands. She wasn't that girl anymore, not entirely. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady, not cleansing, just persistent. Like truth, the news broke quietly. No headlines, no cameras waiting outside the clinic. Just a short article buried halfway down the local paper's website, written in careful language that avoided drama. A prominent businessman revises estate plans to include acknowledgement of previously undisclosed child. No names, no photographs, but people talked anyway. They always did. Annie noticed it first at the grocery store. The cashier paused too long when she handed back the change. Her eyes flicked from Annie to her brother, then away again. At school, a boy whispered something that made another laugh. Annie didn't hear the words, but she recognized the tone. Curiosity sharpened into judgment. Her brother felt it too. They're looking at me, he said that afternoon, sitting stiffly at the kitchen table. They don't know what they're looking at, Annie replied. That doesn't stop them. Their mother overheard. She set down the dish she was drying and turned to him. People will always try to fill silence with stories, she said. That doesn't make the stories true. Her brother nodded, but his jaw stayed tight. The man called that evening. I want to warn you, he said. This may get louder before it gets quieter. Her mother didn't soften. We didn't ask for protection. I know, he replied. I'm offering transparency. Annie listened from the hallway. There are people who will question your motives, he continued. And mine. It is present. They already have, her mother said. For years. A pause. I deserve that, the man said. You don't. After the call, Annie's mother stood at the window for a long time. You regret this, Annie said carefully. No, her mother replied. I regret how predictable it all is. The next day, Annie's aunt had another clear stretch. She asked for her coat, asked for her shoes, asked to go outside. They took a slow walk around the block, her aunt leaning on Annie's arm. People stare. Her aunt murmured. Yes, Annie said. Her aunt smiled faintly. Let them. I spent too long shrinking. They passed a park where a group of older men sat on benches, talking loudly about nothing in particular. One of them glanced over, recognition flickering for a second too long. Her aunt straightened. That, she said quietly, is the look of someone realizing their version of the story was incomplete. Annie didn't answer. She was learning that silence could be a kind of dignity. At the clinic later that week, A nurse pulled Annie's mother aside. "You're handling this well," she said. Her mother raised an eyebrow. "Handling what?" "The attention," the nurse replied gently. Her mother sighed. "We didn't choose visibility. It followed us home." That night, Annie found her brother sitting on the porch steps, staring at the street. "I don't like being talked about," he said. "I know," Annie replied, sitting beside him. "I didn't do anything," he added. "I didn't ask for him." Annie nodded. "That doesn't mean your existence is a mistake." He looked at her sharply. "Sometimes it feels like it is." Annie swallowed. "It's not. It's just inconvenient for people who wanted simpler lies." Inside, their mother was on the phone again. This time, the voice on the other end was not the man's. It was a reporter. "No," her mother said firmly. "We won't comment." A pause. "No," she repeated. "This isn't a redemption story. It's a responsibility story." She hung up without waiting for a response. Later, she sat Annie down. "If anyone asks you questions," she said, "you don't owe them answers." Annie nodded. "Even if they sound nice?" "Especially then," her mother replied. The first real confrontation came from family. A distant cousin called. Her voice tight with disapproval masked as concern. "Do you think this is healthy for the children?" the cousin asked. "What's unhealthy?" Annie's mother replied evenly. "Is pretending children don't exist because adults made poor choices." The cousin didn't call back. At school, Annie's teacher pulled her aside. "If you need extra support," the woman said, "we can arrange it." Annie met her eyes. "Support for what?" "For everything," the teacher replied. Annie smiled politely. "I'm fine." She wasn't lying. She just wasn't explaining. One afternoon, the man showed up unannounced at the clinic. He didn't go inside. He waited across the street, leaning against his car, hands in his pockets. Annie noticed him through the window. Her aunt noticed too. "He didn't come in," her aunt said. "No," Annie replied. Her aunt nodded. "Good." Later, he called. "I didn't want to disrupt her," he said. "She noticed," Annie's mother replied. "I assumed she would. She didn't ask to see you." "I know." Silence. "I'm learning where my presence helps," he said finally, "and where it doesn't." Her mother paused. "That's new. It's overdue," he replied. That night, Annie took the photograph out again. She studied it under the lamp, noticing once more the space between the adults, the way the child was held tightly by one and merely observed by the other. She wondered how many lives were shaped by distances no one talked about. She slid the photo back into the drawer. Some truths didn't need to be displayed to be honored. Outside, the neighborhood settled into evening. Cars passed, lights flicked on. Ordinary life continued, indifferent to quiet reckonings. Annie realized something then. Justice didn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looked like exposure. And sometimes, the bravest thing was standing still while the world adjusted to the truth. The first time her brother asked about his father, it wasn't dramatic. It happened on a Tuesday evening while Annie was washing dishes and their mother was folding laundry in the living room. "Does he get scared?" her brother asked suddenly, staring at the floor. Annie paused, a plate still in her hands. "Who?" "The man," he said. "Him." Their mother stopped folding. "Why do you ask?" she said carefully. He shrugged. "Because everyone else seems scared of him, but I don't think he looks brave." Annie dried her hands and sat down across from him. "Bravery doesn't always look like loud people think it does." Her brother frowned. "Is he scared of us?" Their mother answered this time. "Yes," she said, "but not for the reasons you might think." That seemed to satisfy him, at least for the moment. Later that night, Annie overheard her mother on the phone again. "He's asking for a private visit," her mother said. "With supervision." A pause. "No," she continued. "Not with the children present." Another pause. "Yes, that's non-negotiable." Annie leaned against the wall, listening. "I understand," her mother said finally. "But understanding doesn't equal access." The call ended. Annie stepped into the room. "He wants to see her," she said. Her mother nodded. "He does. And she doesn't want to see him yet," her mother replied. "That matters." The next few days were heavy, not with conflict, but with waiting. Her aunt had good mornings and difficult afternoons. Some days she laughed easily. telling stories that drifted between truth and imagination. Other days, she stared at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. One afternoon, she asked Annie a question that caught her off guard. "Do you think I ruined his life?" her aunt asked quietly. Annie sat beside her on the couch. "No." Her aunt tilted her head. "You didn't even hesitate. Because he made choices," Annie said. "And you existed. Those aren't the same thing." Her aunt smiled sadly. "You sound older every day." "I feel older," Annie replied. Her aunt reached for her hand. "Don't grow up too fast." "I won't," Annie said, though she wasn't sure that was entirely true. At school, the attention faded as quickly as it had flared. People got bored. They always did. But one boy didn't. He cornered Annie's brother during recess. "So your dad's rich," he said. "My mom is tired," her brother replied. The boy laughed. "That's not what I asked." "My answer didn't change," her brother said, and walked away. When Annie heard about it later, she felt a quiet swell of pride. That evening, the man sent a message through his assistant. Just one sentence. "If she ever wants to see me, I'll be there. If she doesn't, I'll still be here." Annie's mother read it, then deleted it. "He's learning restraint," she said. "Is that good?" Annie asked. "It's necessary," her mother replied. Whether it's good remains to be seen. A week later, her aunt asked for the photograph. Annie hesitated before handing it over. Her aunt studied it for a long time. "He looked so sure of himself," she murmured. "I thought certainty meant safety." Annie sat quietly. "I didn't know how lonely confidence could be," her aunt continued. "Not until I lost it." She handed the photo back. "You keep it. I thought you might want it," Annie said. Her aunt shook her head. "I don't need proof anymore." That night, Annie dreamed of standing in a long hallway with many doors. Some were open, some were locked, some had no handles at all. She woke with her heart racing. In the morning, her brother was unusually calm. "I think I know why he scares people," he said over breakfast. "Why?" Annie asked. "Because when someone like him messes up," he said slowly, "they expect the world to forgive them just because they're important." Weak. Their mother looked at him thoughtfully. "And what do you think?" she asked. "I think being important doesn't make you right," he said. "It just makes your mistakes louder." Her mother smiled. "That's very accurate." The clinic scheduled a family meeting, not with the man, with social services, just in case. The caseworker was kind but direct. "You're doing well," she said. "But you need boundaries that don't depend on anyone else's promises." Annie's mother nodded. "We already learned that." The caseworker glanced at Annie. "You're very observant." Annie shrugged. "Someone has to notice things." That evening, the man called again. This time, Annie listened openly. "I won't push," he said. "I won't negotiate through guilt." Her mother replied evenly. "That's a start. I don't expect gratitude," he added. "I just want to do less harm." "That's not nothing," her mother said. "But it's not the end." "I know," he replied. After the call, Annie realized something had changed. He wasn't asking for absolution anymore. He was learning how to live with the weight of what he'd done, and carry it quietly. Outside, autumn crept into the city. Leaves turned, air cooled. Time moved forward whether anyone was ready or not. Annie sat on the porch with her brother, watching the streetlights flicker on. "Do you think people can change?" her brother asked. "Yes," Annie said. "But not because they want to feel better." "I am Selv." "Then why?" "Because they finally understand who they hurt," she replied. He nodded, satisfied. Annie looked up at the darkening sky. Some stories didn't end with forgiveness. Some ended with truth, and sometimes that was enough. The call came just after dawn. Annie knew something was wrong before her mother even spoke. She recognized the way her mother's shoulders tightened, the way her hand pressed flat against the kitchen counter as she listened. "Yes," her mother said quietly. "I understand." Annie and her brother waited. Their mother hung up, closed her eyes for a moment, then turned to them. "Your aunt had a seizure this morning," she said. "They've stabilized her. But we need to go to the hospital." And the drive was silent, not heavy with fear exactly, but with something more familiar now. The quiet that came from knowing life could tilt without warning, that progress didn't grant immunity. At the hospital, Everything smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Their aunt was awake when they reached her room, pale but conscious, her hand wrapped in wires and tape. She smiled when she saw Annie. "You look serious," she murmured. Annie swallowed. "You scared us." Her aunt's eyes softened. "I'm sorry." Her mother stepped closer. "The doctors say it may be stress-related." Her aunt laughed weakly. "Of course it is." They stayed most of the morning. Her brother sat quietly in the chair by the window, knees pulled up, watching clouds drift past like they might explain something if he stared long enough. By noon, the man arrived. Not in a suit, not with anyone else, just him. He stopped just inside the doorway, unsure, like someone who had forgotten the rules of a place that once belonged to him. "I heard," he said softly. Her mother nodded. "She's stable." He didn't step closer. "I didn't come to ask," he said. "Only to be here." Her aunt turned her head toward him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice thin but steady. "You always arrive after the damage," she said. He nodded. "I know. IMBIs. You don't get to make this about your guilt," she continued. "I won't," he replied. Her aunt studied him carefully. "Then sit down." He did, not beside her, not touching, just close enough to hear. "I don't forgive you," her aunt said. "I didn't expect you to," he replied. "But," she continued, "I don't want my pain to raise our children." Annie felt her breath hitch at the word "our." Her aunt's eyes flicked briefly toward her son, then back to the man. "You don't get to disappear anymore," her aunt said. "Not as punishment, not as penance." The man's hands tightened together. "I can stay," he said. "At a distance. On your terms." Her aunt nodded. "That's the only way it works." The doctors came and went. Time passed strangely, folding in on itself. At some point, Annie realized her brother was staring at the man, not with anger, with curiosity. "Do you like airplanes?" her brother asked suddenly. The man blinked, surprised. "Yes," he said. "When I was your age, I wanted to be a pilot." Her brother considered this. "Why weren't you?" The man hesitated. "Because I chose something else." Her brother nodded, satisfied. "My mom says choices don't disappear just because you regret them." The man smiled faintly. "Your mom is very wise." "She had to be," her brother replied. Later, when visiting hours ended, the man stood. "I'll go," he said. "I won't push." Her aunt looked at him. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "But don't bring promises." He nodded. "Just myself." When he left, Annie realized something else. He hadn't asked for forgiveness. He hadn't explained himself. He had listened. That night, Annie lay awake in the hospital chair beside her aunt's bed. Her aunt slept restlessly. Annie thought about what it meant to stay. Not heroically, not dramatically, just consistently. In the morning, the man returned. Then the next day, and the next. Sometimes he spoke, sometimes he didn't. Sometimes her aunt ignored him completely. Sometimes she asked him practical questions about doctors, insurance, logistics. He answered without defensiveness. Her mother watched carefully, saying little. Trust, Annie learned, wasn't rebuilt with declarations. It was rebuilt with predictability. On the fourth day, her aunt asked Annie to step closer. "You carried my apology," her aunt whispered. Annie nodded. "I want you to hear this," her aunt said. She turned her head slightly toward the man. "I stayed silent for years," her aunt said. "I thought disappearing was strength." The man didn't interrupt. "I was wrong," she continued. "Silence didn't protect me. It only protected the lie." She paused, catching her breath. "I won't be silent anymore," she said. "Not for you, not for anyone." The man nodded. "You shouldn't be." Annie felt tears sting her eyes. This wasn't reconciliation. It was recognition. When her aunt was discharged, she came home weaker, but clearer. The house adjusted itself again. Routines shifted. The man helped quietly. Paid bills without fanfare. Fixed a loose step. Left when asked. He never stayed too long. One evening, Annie found him on the porch, staring at the street. "You don't have to wait out here," she said. He smiled slightly. "I know. But this feels right." "Why?" Because for most of my life, he said, I walked into rooms assuming I belonged. And now I wait to be invited. Annie nodded. That felt fair. The days passed, not peacefully, but honestly, and Annie understood something she hadn't before. Justice didn't always arrive as punishment. Sometimes it arrived as responsibility that didn't get to leave. The first real argument happened on a Sunday. It wasn't loud. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just words placed carefully enough to cut. It started with dinner. Her aunt had insisted on cooking. Nothing complicated: chicken soup, vegetables, cornbread from a box. The kind of meal that carried memory more than flavor. The man offered to help. You don't have to, her aunt said. I know, he replied. I want to. She didn't answer. At the table, her aunt barely touched her food. You're hovering, she said finally. The man froze. I'm sitting. You're waiting, she corrected. Like I'm going to break if you look away. Silence settled over the table. Annie felt her brother tense beside her. Her mother didn't intervene. The man took a breath. I don't know how to be here without doing too much. That's not my problem, her aunt said. You had years to learn. He nodded. You're right. Her aunt pushed her bowl away. I don't want to feel like a project. Kudization Zufter. You're not, he said. You say that, she replied. But you still act like you owe something. I do, he said quietly. That's the problem, she snapped. You think this is debt. It's not. It's damage. The word hung in the air. Annie watched the man carefully. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. He simply said, then tell me what helps. Her aunt laughed bitterly. I don't know yet. Then I'll wait, he said. Waiting isn't enough, she replied. I know, he said, but it's where I'm starting. Her aunt stood up slowly, steadying herself on the table. I'm tired, she said. Of being strong, of being reasonable, of teaching grown men how to behave. She turned toward Annie and her brother. Her voice softened. This isn't about you, she said. Never think that. Annie nodded. After her aunt went to bed, the house felt unbalanced. Her brother broke the silence. She's angry, he said. Yes, Annie replied. At him? At everything, Annie said, including herself. Later that night, Annie found the man sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at the sink. She hates me, he said, not looking up. Annie hesitated, then spoke. No, she hates that she had to survive alone. He nodded slowly. That feels worse. It is, Annie said. He finally looked at her. You shouldn't have had to say that. Annie shrugged. Someone should. The next morning, her aunt didn't come out of her room. Her mother checked on her quietly. She needs space, her mother said when she returned. The man nodded. I'll leave for the day. You don't have to, her mother replied. I want to, he said. Not because I'm leaving. Because I'm listening. He left without drama. No sighs, no wounded pride. Just a coat, keys, and a quiet goodbye. That afternoon, Annie helped her aunt sit by the window. I pushed too hard, her aunt said suddenly. Annie didn't respond right away. You're allowed to be angry, Annie said carefully. But you're not wrong for wanting peace. Her aunt smiled faintly. You sound like your mother. Annie nodded. I'm learning. The man didn't return until evening. When he didn't go inside right away. He waited on the porch. Her aunt saw him through the window. She sighed. He's still there. Yes, Annie said. Tell him to come in, her aunt said after a long pause. I don't want to shout across years anymore. Annie opened the door. He said I could stay, the man said quickly. But I didn't want to assume. You never had trouble assuming before. Her aunt replied dryly. I know, he said. I'm trying not to repeat myself. They sat in the living room. Not close, not far. I don't need you to fix anything, her aunt said. I need you to stop making this about redemption, he nodded. Then tell me what it's about. She looked at him steadily. It's about accountability without performance. He absorbed that. No speeches, she continued. No gestures meant to look good later. I can do that, he said. Can you do nothing? She asked. And not resent it? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't know yet, but I won't punish you while I learn. That mattered. Over the next weeks, something subtle shifted. He stopped anticipating needs, stopped filling silence. He asked questions and accepted short answers. Sometimes no answers at all. He showed up when asked, left when told, paid attention without insisting on gratitude. Annie noticed how her aunt relaxed when he wasn't trying to be useful, how her shoulders lowered when she wasn't being observed like a fragile thing. One afternoon, her aunt asked him to drive her to the clinic. He didn't say a word the whole way. When they returned, she said quietly, "Thank you for not talking." He nodded. "Thank you for trusting me with the quiet." Her brother watched all of this carefully. One night, he asked Annie, "Is this what fixing looks like?" Annie shook her head. "No, this is what not making it worse looks like." He considered that. "That seems harder." "It is," Annie replied. Weeks passed, not cleanly, but honestly. One evening, her aunt surprised them all. "I want him to stay for dinner," she said. The man froze. "Only if you want," he said. "I said what I said," she replied. Dinner was quiet but not tense. No one performed. No one apologized. They ate. They existed in the same space. Afterward, as the man stood to leave, her aunt spoke again. "I don't forgive you," she said. He nodded. "I know, but," she added, "I don't regret surviving you anymore." That landed harder than forgiveness ever could. The man swallowed. "Thank you for saying that." Later that night, Annie lay awake, listening to the familiar sounds of the house. She realized something important. Healing wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive with closure or relief. It arrived with boundaries that held, with people learning to stay without taking over, with silence that no longer felt like abandonment. And Annie knew they were close now, not to an ending, but to a truth that would finally stop moving. The morning came quietly. No announcements, no turning point marked by sound or spectacle, just light slipping through the kitchen window, settling on the table where Annie had done her homework, where arguments had softened into conversations, where decisions had finally learned to wait their turn. Annie woke before everyone else. She sat on the porch with her feet tucked beneath her, listening to the neighborhood breathe. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A delivery truck passed. Ordinary life, steady and indifferent. Behind her, the screen door creaked softly. Her brother stepped out, rubbing his eyes. He sat beside her without speaking. After a moment, he said, "Is it over now?" Annie knew what he meant. "No," she said honestly. "But it's not falling apart anymore." He nodded, accepting that answer the way he accepted most truths now carefully, without arguing. Inside, her aunt was already awake. She moved slowly but with intention, leaning on the counter as she poured coffee. Her hands trembled less these days. Her eyes held more focus, more presence. The man stood a few feet away, waiting, not hovering, waiting. "I'm going back to New York tomorrow," he said quietly. Her aunt didn't look at him right away. "I assumed you would. I wanted you to hear it from me," he continued, "not disappear." She turned then, studying him. "You can leave without vanishing now. That's different." He nodded. "I'll come when invited." "And when you're not?" she asked. "I'll stay where I am," he replied. "And carry it." That was the right answer. Later that afternoon, Annie walked with her aunt to the end of the block. Not far, just enough. The air smelled like leaves and asphalt. Fall was settling in fully now. "I didn't think I'd make it this far," her aunt said suddenly. Annie tightened her grip on her arm. "You did." "Yes," her aunt replied, "but not because I was strong, because I stopped pretending strength meant silence." They stood there for a moment, watching cars pass. "I'm proud of you," her aunt said. Annie blinked. "For what?" "For telling the truth when it scared you," her aunt replied. "For carrying words that weren't meant for a child and not letting them poison you." Annie swallowed. "I didn't know what else to do." "That's how courage works," her aunt said. "You don't recognize it until you've already done it." That evening, they shared one last dinner together before the man left. No speeches, no ceremonies, just food and quiet conversation. At the end of the meal, the man stood. "I won't say goodbye," he said. "I'll say thank you." He turned to Annie. "You were braver than all of us," he said, "and you didn't have to be." Annie met his eyes. "Just don't forget what you learned." He nodded. "I won't." That's the part that stays. He knelt briefly in front of his son. Not touching, not demanding. I'm here, he said simply. Whenever you want to talk. Her brother looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, I know. That was enough. After the car pulled away, dust settling in its wake, the house felt different. Not emptier, clearer. Annie stood in the doorway, watching the road. Her mother came up beside her. You did good, her mother said. Annie shook her head. We all did. Her mother smiled. Yes, we did. Weeks passed. Life resumed its quieter rhythms. School, clinic visits, homework at the table. Her aunt grew stronger, step by step. Not healed, not fixed, but present. Her brother laughed more easily now. He still noticed the world's sharp edges, but they no longer defined him. Annie kept the photograph in her drawer. She didn't look at it often. She didn't need to. One evening, her brother asked her a question that stopped her mid-step. Do you think he's sorry? He asked. Annie considered it carefully. Yes, she said. But that's not the most important part. What is? That he finally stopped asking forgiveness to make himself feel better, she replied, and started listening instead. Her brother nodded, thoughtful. On a Sunday afternoon, Annie sat on the porch with her aunt, the rocking chair creaking gently beneath her. I used to think justice meant someone paying, her aunt said softly, losing something. And now? Annie asked. Now I think justice is when the truth stops being carried by the smallest person in the room, her aunt replied. Annie felt something settle inside her. That night, Annie lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the words that had started everything. Tell her that, I'm sorry. She understood now. An apology didn't change the past. It changed who had to carry it. The world outside continued, imperfect and uneven. But inside this small house, something had shifted permanently. No one was invisible anymore. No one was pretending. And Annie knew, with a certainty that felt earned rather than given, that sometimes the quietest truths were the ones that changed everything. Not because they were loud, but because they were finally heard. The story reminds us that true justice and healing do not come from grand apologies, wealth, or power, but from accountability, humility, and the courage to face the harm we cause. Being sorry is not enough if it only serves to ease one's own conscience. What truly matters is the willingness to listen, to respect boundaries, and to allow those who were hurt to reclaim their voices. The story teaches that real change happens quietly when responsibility replaces excuses, when presence replaces abandonment, and when the burden of truth is no longer placed on the weakest, but carried by those who created it. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.